Scotch College has provided boarding facilities for students since soon after the school's establishment in 1919. After the first decade, there were 112 boarders out of 319 students, and the life of a boarder was an incredibly Spartan experience at this time.
Electricity was non-existent and hot water was not connected until much later. It was the duty of the prefects to ensure that each boarder had a cold shower each morning during both winter and summer.
Fresh air was considered an essential element of a healthy life, and the fact that the senior boys slept on the veranda of Torrens House from autumn to summer, protected only by a canvas blind, was not uncommon in boarding houses at that time. Remarkably, the older boys considered this a privilege, as it allowed them much greater freedom than their junior peers, and in summer it was a relief from the un-air-conditioned heat of the old building.
Despite the conditions, they could be considered lucky, as it was only in the 20th century that young children were no longer expected to work alongside adults. By 1918, school attendance was not only compulsory, but the school leaving age was raised from 12 to 14 years old.
By 1968, there were over 200 boarders, and they were all located in Torrens House. Overcrowding was such a problem, it was decided to move some of the senior boarders to Montrose House to share space with the junior boys.
Around 1979, Montrose House underwent renovations and became the new home of girls' boarding at Scotch, and the boarding area of Torrens Park House was remodelled to accommodate the juniors.
This situation remained almost the same, with only minor improvements until Mr. Tim Oughton became principal. His team, led by Walter Brook Architects, was determined to give our boarders a contemporary home away from home, and it was decided to make the facility co-educational. The concept was a radical departure for the school and caused a surprising amount of controversy. Fortunately, good design and culture has solved many of these concerns.
In 2011, the college opened a new co-educational boarding precinct named for Mr. Jim Rosevear.
Jim was a much-loved teacher and head of middle school who spent his last years at Scotch as head of boarding.
It was Jim and his team who revitalised boarding at Scotch and re-established important lines of communication with parents, an aspect that is still an essential component of life in Rosevear.
Jim also coached a variety of sports, most notably Australian rules football and cricket. Stories about Jim's ability to get the best out of his players and teams in competition have become legendary.
Everyone who worked with Jim was aware that he knew every child in his care. He could rattle off their name, family history, and put them at ease with a funny story about a family connection he'd made while teaching a brother, sister, mum or dad, or even a distant family member he'd met at a pub somewhere in his travels around the country. His memory for names and faces was legendary.
Jim Rosevear published several books when he retired, including Count My Lucky Stars, Teaching Tales by Jim Rosevear, Knuckles, The Neil Curley Story, and Knuckles 2, Curl's favourite among others.
The Rosevear boarding precinct accommodates students from years 6 to 12, both male and female, with individual and shared bedrooms, common rooms with kitchenettes, laundries and storage areas, study spaces, a tutor suite and a large outdoor barbecue area.
It is a striking contemporary building, and I believe Jim would be proud to have his name associated with an aspect of schooling he loved so much. My name is David Scholes. I'm the head of boys boarding. I'm going to leave it at that.
Okay.
God damn.
My name is Cara Cleary and I'm the head of girls boarding and Rosevear.
The boarding house in 2019 is a very diverse environment. We have students from Korea, from China, from Thailand, from Darwin, from stations in the middle of the outback, from the southeast, from the Yorke Peninsula, from a range of different places around the world. And it is a place that is vibrant and supportive of the students within it.
Boarding is about relationships, and we're in a really privileged position to live and work with these students every day. We know that they're forming long-lasting relationships and that we are establishing them for a really good start to the rest of the wide world.